The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never seen silence like this. Not when the Krell Empire invaded the Rhodian systems. Not even when the Vexian warlords declared total annihilation of Sector 9. But today was different. The silence wasn't from fear. It was anticipation, thick and humming like static in the air. Every eye in the room, be it biological or synthetic, turned toward the entrance. The humans were coming. They were late. Purposefully late. Behind them, war still burned like a wildfire in dry grass. Systems fell, moons cracked. But humanity hadn't come to beg. They hadn't come with treaties or with shame, number. They were coming like thunder. "They're making a statement," muttered Counselor Z of the Yalari swarm, his insectoid mandibles twitching nervously. Typical primitives, no decorum. Beside him, the Thaloon delegate said nothing. Her translucent skin shimmered with unease. Everyone remembered what the humans did to the Drex Armada. That fleet was supposed to be unbeatable, until Earth answered with fire and madness. The ornate doors hissed open. They didn't walk in with a parade or a peace envoy. 3 humans entered. That was all. No banners, no music, just 3 figures in military black, dusted with ash and blood. The tall one in the middle walked like he owned the stars. His face was half covered with a burn scar, and yet it was his eyes that unsettled everyone. Calm, cold, calculated. Like he had already judged every species in the room and found them lacking. Behind him, a woman with steel-gray hair and a limp carried a data tablet and what looked like a folded human flag. The third, a younger man, no older than 25 standard years, was armed. He didn't hide it. He wore a plasma rifle on his back, fully charged. The chamber shifted with discomfort. Weapons weren't allowed. But no one spoke. The lead human stepped onto the central platform, which hovered above the rest of the council like a throne for those who believed they had the right to speak. He looked down at the sea of delegates. "I'm Commander Elias Rourke, Terran Defense Forces," he said. His voice didn't echo. It cut. "I wasn't invited. Humanity never got a seat at this table." He paused. "But we showed up anyway." A murmur spread like disease among the delegates. The Ixari delegate, a being made of glowing crystals, rose in protest. "This is a breach of protocol. You cannot just arrive here armed, unannounced." "Sit down." Rourke's words weren't loud, but something in them made even the air obey. The Ixari delegate lowered itself. Elias continued. "For 3 galactic cycles, we asked for help. Not aid, respect. You ignored us. You said we were newborns, unfit for council matters, violent by nature. Funny how you say that while hiding behind fleets and pointing guns at each other." His voice was calm. Too calm. "We warned you. The Drex were coming. We offered cooperation. You laughed. They hit us first. We didn't cry. We didn't beg. We hit back." The woman beside him unfurled the flag. It was torn, stained with dark patches of red, human blood. "This came from the Battle of Orion's Reach," she said quietly. 17 billion lives, mostly ours. We held the line." No one in the chamber moved. "You call us violent?" Elias said. "You're damn right, but we use violence to protect our own. We don't start wars. We finish them." A low hum began. The data transmission from Earth had arrived, a full holographic recording of the human Drex war. Counselors gasped as they saw orbital bombardments, planetary defense grids collapsing, humans fighting in zero gravity with nothing but grit and makeshift weapons. There were no glorious speeches, no mercy, just a species fighting extinction with everything it had. "And now," Rourke said, his tone shifting like a storm front, "we're not asking to join the council. We're telling you. He looked each delegate in the eye. "We are here, not because you allowed it, but because we survived everything you didn't." Behind him, the young soldier removed his rifle and laid it on the floor with a soft clink. "We bring peace," Elias said, "but understand this. Earth will never kneel again, not to the Drex, not to you." He turned to leave, but paused at the threshold. "The war's not over. The Drex are still coming. But next time, if you want to survive, you'll follow our lead." And just like that, the humans walked out, leaving a chamber full of silence, smoke, and the heavy sound of reality sinking in. The silence lingered long after the humans left. It wasn't just shock. It was fear. No one dared to speak first, as if breaking the quiet might draw that same wrath upon them. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council wasn't the most powerful force in the galaxy. That title now belonged to the ones who just left the room without permission. In a back chamber, Counselor Cyril of the Thaloon Confederacy stared at the replay of Elias Rourke's speech. She watched it 3 times, each time slower than before. The humans hadn't brought an army. They had brought something worse. Certainty. She tapped her comms. "Send word to the homeworld. Begin immediate analysis on Terran military growth. And get me their war logs from Orion's Reach. All of them." "But Counselor," her aide buzzed, "accessing human combat data is nearly impossible. They've encrypted it with quantum keys. Breaking it would take years." Cyril's expression hardened. "Then we better start now." Elsewhere in the council spire, a different reaction was unfolding. Ambassador Kuroth of the Krell Dominion was laughing, loudly. The sound of a Krell laugh was like a meat grinder filled with gravel, but that didn't stop him from enjoying it. "Oh, this is rich," he bellowed, slamming one of his massive hands on the table. "Did you see their eyes? The cold? The fury? That, my friends, is a species ready to dominate." His adjutant tilted its head. "Should we consider an alliance?" Kuroth snarled. "Not alliance, observation. Humanity is useful, like a loaded weapon. But you don't hand a loaded weapon to a child. You watch, you wait, and when they turn the barrel on you, then you decide how much trust was worth." Across the galaxy, word spread fast. Even species that had never attended the council now tuned in. Pirate lords in the Kellan expanse whispered about human tactics. Smugglers discussed the sudden, terrifying efficiency of Terran warships. On mining colonies and distant moons, small children replayed Rourke's speech as a lesson in strength. Back on Earth, the home front was burning. Not literally, but close. The victory at Orion's Reach came with a cost no one could truly process. 17 billion lives. Most of them civilians caught in Drex firestorms. Cities gone. Oceans poisoned. The Terran government had tried to keep the images under wraps, but grief leaks. Rage does too. In the underground shelter city of New Sydney, Rourke walked through a crowd of survivors. No guards, no fanfare. Just the boots of a soldier who never truly came home. A child stopped him. She couldn't have been older than 7. She clutched a stuffed animal burned on one side and looked up at him with wide, hollow eyes. "Did we win?" she asked. Rourke crouched. He wanted to lie. He really did. Instead he said, "Not yet. But we will." The girl nodded like she understood more than any child should. Afterward, Rourke met with his inner circle. Generals, fleet commanders, intelligence officers. The room was a former hospital basement. Now it was command central for what was left of Earth's top brass. "Status?" he asked. General Mora, a woman with a steel plate covering half her skull, replied. "The Council's a mess. Half of them fear us. The other half want to recruit us for their own wars. But the Drex aren't done. We have confirmed fleets gathering in the shadow zones of Sector 12. "How long?" Rourke asked. 3 weeks, maybe less. Admiral Singh, the youngest fleet admiral in human history, leaned forward. We can't defend Earth again, not like last time. But if we go there, if we take the fight to them, we might not have to. A long silence followed. Then Rourke nodded. Prepare the offensive. Mobilize the Orion-class carriers. And I want intel on any species willing to fight with us. Not above us. Not for us. With us. He looked around the room. We gave the Council a warning. Now let's give the Drex a message. And somewhere, deep in the cold void between stars, a new Terran fleet began to awaken. Quietly, like a storm pulling breath before it breaks. The Orion-class carriers drifted like ghosts through the void, engines on minimal output to avoid detection. Sleek, dark, and massive, these ships were humanity's final answer to extinction. Each one carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet. But what made them terrifying wasn't just the weapons. It was the crew. Veterans, survivors, people who had already lost everything and had no intention of losing again. Commander Elias Rourke stood on the bridge of the TDS Retribution, his eyes fixed on the star map floating before him. Red dots blinked in growing clusters, Drex fleets assembling, waiting to strike. But now humanity wouldn't wait. "We strike first," he muttered. His second-in-command, Captain Leona Vex, nodded. "All fleets report ready. Stealth systems holding. Operation Widow's Bite is green-lit." "Then light the fuse," Rourke said. Back on the council world of Gallus Prime, news of humanity's impending offensive reached the chambers like a tidal wave. The Yalari delegates hissed in outrage. The Vossian diplomats demanded emergency hearings. Even the usually neutral Thaloon issued a formal statement of deep concern. But concern wasn't action. "They're provoking the Drex," Counselor Z whined. "This could destabilize half the quadrant." Counselor Sarrel leaned forward, eyes sharp. "They're not provoking anyone. They're surviving, something most of us haven't had to do in centuries." Z scoffed. "We should sanction them." "And do what?" Sarrel snapped. "Fine them? Embargo them? They don't trade with us. They don't need us. We had our chance to work with Earth, and we spat in their face. Now we either get out of their way, or we get trampled." Across the galaxy, other races were starting to make choices. The Martaxi nomads, long isolated and fiercely independent, sent a message of solidarity to Earth. "We recognize strength. We recognize pain. You are not alone." The Korgan mercenary clans, who once refused Terran contracts, offered free services to human commanders. Free. That had never happened before. And even within the Drex Empire, something was shifting. In the outer territories, rebel factions, once too weak to defy the Drex war machine, now whispered about the humans. They passed around decrypted clips of Terran soldiers walking through burning cities, pulling civilians from rubble with bare hands. They played audio of Rourke's speech, like it was scripture. "If they can fight the Drex," one rebel commander said, "maybe we can too." But while hope stirred across the stars, vengeance brewed in silence. The Drex warlords were not accustomed to resistance, let alone defeat. The loss at Orion's Reach was not just a military failure. It was a personal insult to their supremacy. In the cold halls of their capital ship, bloodlit sovereign, High Marshal Krax surveyed the reports. He watched the footage of Terran forces overrunning his elite units. He studied their weapons, their movements, their rage. "They are flawed," he growled. "Weak flesh and broken worlds, but they fight like cornered beasts." "Permission to retaliate?" asked his strategist, a multi-limbed creature named Vaz. "Retaliate?" Krax's eyes glowed. "Number we exterminate." He tapped the star map. "Target their outer colonies, scorch them, leave nothing breathing, then we go for Earth. And this time, no survivors." The Drex armada began to move, engines roaring like demons set loose. But humanity was ready. Inside the TDS Retribution, Rourke received the intel within minutes. The Drex weren't hiding anymore. They were coming fast, direct, full of pride and fury. "Just as we wanted," he whispered. Captain Vex smirked. "You think they've fallen for it?" "They're Drex," he said. "They can't not fall for it." The Terran fleet scattered, not in retreat, but in strategy. Ghost ships, trap zones, cloaked mines disguised as derelict transports. Every inch of space between Earth and the Drex invasion path had been turned into a graveyard waiting to happen. Rourke turned to his crew. "They think we're prey. Let's make them choke on it." As the countdown to war began again, every human alive, whether in bunker, ship, or refugee shelter, felt it. Not fear. Resolve. This time, humanity wasn't fighting for survival. They were fighting for vengeance. The trap was set. In the black stretch of Sector 12, where starlight barely reached and debris fields drifted like frozen graves, the Drex fleet advanced with brutal confidence. Hundreds of warships, massive, spiked monstrosities powered by fusion cores the size of buildings, swept through space in formation, shields humming, weapons charged. But what they didn't realize was that they were already inside the kill box. The TDS Retribution floated dark and silent behind a shattered moon, one of many human warships hidden in the void. Power levels were at minimal, heat signatures masked. Every crew member was quiet, eyes glued to their displays, breaths shallow like prey waiting for the right moment to strike back. "Contact," whispered Captain Vex. "Drex heavy cruisers entering primary field." "Let them come," Rourke said, voice low but sharp. "We want them to feel safe." All across the sector, similar whispers passed between human vessels. Not one command barked, not one order shouted. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. The Drex moved closer. Their scanners showed nothing but wreckage and dead systems. To them, this was just a cleanup mission. A final burn, and then... The stars exploded. A ripple of energy erupted from a derelict mining barge. Except it wasn't a barge. It was a converted EMP drone ship loaded with anti-shield disruptors. In seconds, 20 Drex ships lost power, flickered, and went dark. Before they could respond, hell fell on them from above. Human destroyers dropped out of stealth and formation like wolves on a wounded herd. Railguns fired tungsten rods at supersonic speeds, punching through hulls like butter. Plasma bursts arced in elegant surgical bursts. No screams. No mercy. From the bridge of the Retribution, Rourke stood still, eyes tracking the chaos as if it were a dance he had memorized. "Strike Teams Alpha through Delta, deploy," he said calmly. "Cripple their engines, leave a few alive." Drop ships launched. Sleek and black, they dove through Drex formations and latched onto enemy hulls like parasites. Inside, human marines, heavily armored, heavily scarred, breached Drex vessels with shaped charges and stormed inside, hand to hand, blade to claw, blood to blood. In one such battle aboard a Drex battlecruiser, Sergeant Naira Wells charged through the smoke, her sidearm empty, her face cut from cheek to jaw. A Drex warrior lunged, snarling with 3 serrated arms, but she dodged under it and drove a combat knife into its throat. "You invaded the wrong planet," she hissed, yanking the blade sideways. Behind her squad sealed the command chamber, planted explosives, and retreated. 30 seconds later, the entire ship tore apart from within. The battle lasted 13 minutes. When it was over, 90 Drex warships were wreckage. 23 human ships were damaged, 3 lost. Casualties. Minimal, considering what they'd faced. The survivors floated helplessly, escape pods blinking in the dark, and Rourke made sure every pod was pulled aboard. He wanted witnesses. On the Retribution, they gathered them in the hangar bay. Dozens of Drex officers, bound and defiant. Their eyes burned with hate, but their pride had cracks now. Rourke stepped forward. No speech, no warning. He simply played a hologram. It was footage of the colony on Carthos 4, the one the Drex had incinerated. Civilians screaming as firestorms engulfed buildings. Children buried under rubble. Medics dying with patients in their arms. The Drex prisoners watched in silence. Some growled. Others looked away. "You thought we'd forget that?" Rourke asked. No answer. "You thought we'd beg?" He stepped closer to one of the high-ranking Drex officers, a general based on the ceremonial armor. "You don't understand us yet," Rourke said. "You thought we were like the others, fragile, disorganized, merciful." He leaned in. "But we're the monsters you made." Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving the Drex to sit in silence as the screams of their own war echoed around them. That night, across every Terran fleet, there were no celebrations, no songs, just silence. Because they knew this was only the beginning. Rourke didn't sleep that night. He stood alone in the observation deck of the Retribution, watching the wreckage of the Drex fleet drift through space. It looked peaceful from here, almost beautiful. Burned-out husks of warships, their twisted metal bodies lit softly by dying stars. But he knew better. Every one of those ships had once carried soldiers who laughed when they torched civilian colonies, who called it cleansing, who posted trophies of Terran skulls on their black market channels. Now they floated like corpses in a forgotten graveyard, and even that didn't feel like enough. "You did what had to be done," said a voice behind him. He didn't turn. "Did I?" Captain Leona Vex stepped up beside him, her reflection flickering faintly in the glass. "They butchered our people. You hit them back harder. That's what war is." "No," Rourke said. "That's what they think war is. For us, war was survival. But I think we're starting to enjoy it." Vex didn't respond, and that silence said enough. In the following days, Terran forces advanced quickly. Without their fleet, Drex outer colonies fell like dominoes. One by one, human strike teams landed, liberated prisoners, destroyed weapons caches, and pulled out before reinforcements could arrive. Every victory was a message. Every burning Drex symbol was a declaration. Humanity does not kneel. But even as the Drex crumbled on the outside, they rotted faster on the inside. Inside the Empire's core systems, rebellions spread like fire. Species long enslaved under Drex rule, Karnans, Julari, even Drex defectors, took up arms. They didn't fight for humanity. They fought because, for the first time in centuries, someone had punched the monster in the mouth and lived to tell the tale. On the liberated moon of Chaval, an underground broadcast aired across hidden channels. A Karanan leader in cracked armor spoke directly to the camera. Earth didn't ask permission. They didn't wait for treaties. They acted. And in their fire, we found hope. The Drex can bleed. Let's make them drown. Rourke watched the broadcast from orbit. He should have felt pride, maybe even triumph, but all he felt was exhaustion. The cost weighed on him every minute. The faces of the dead never left him. Soldiers, civilians, allies who trusted him. Some nights, he saw their eyes in the metal walls around him. Some nights, he saw her, Elena, his daughter. She died in the first strike, one of the many wiped from existence when the Drex glassed New Boston. He hadn't even found her body, just a necklace, charred, half melted. And when he touched it now, alone in his quarters, he wasn't a commander. He was just a father with nothing left but fury. A soft chime broke the silence. Vex again. "They've responded," she said. "The Galactic Council." He blinked. "Responded? To what?" She hesitated. "They want to negotiate. That made him turn. Negotiate what? We didn't ask for anything. They're proposing a ceasefire, not with the Drex, with us. The word burned in his mouth. A ceasefire? Are they afraid we'll go further? They're not just afraid, Vex said. They're terrified. Rourke leaned back, eyes cold. They sat silent while Earth burned. They ignored our pleas. They watched as children screamed under firestorms. And now they want to talk? They're offering council seats, trade routes, military support, everything they withheld before. He laughed once, bitterly. We bleed, and then we're valuable. Isn't that the story of humanity in every damn corner of the universe? What do we tell them? Rourke didn't speak right away. Then, slowly, he said, Tell them, Earth will attend their council again. Vex raised a brow. Under what terms? No terms, Rourke said. We'll go as guests, as equals. He paused, eyes narrowing. But we'll arrive late. Let them wait. Let them sweat. Let them remember that war echoes behind us. He stood, back straight, voice firm. And this time, we're bringing ghosts. The Galactic Council chamber on Gallus Prime had never been this silent. Not during the secession of the Threx Union. Not during the outbreak of the Bio-Wars. Not even during the collapse of the Lurvan Treaty. But today, silence wasn't diplomatic. It was fear. The humans were coming. Every dignitary, ambassador, and high-ranking official knew it. They didn't say it aloud, but it passed between them like an unspoken prayer. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive upstarts from a fringe planet, was arriving as a force no one could ignore anymore. They had burned through the Drex fleets. They had turned a war of survival into a campaign of dominance. And now they were showing up at the heart of galactic politics, not as supplicants, but as a reminder. At the central podium, Council Speaker Thalvon adjusted his ceremonial robes and cleared his throat. Let us maintain order. The Terran delegation is en route. Let us show unity. But unity didn't come easy when the walls themselves trembled with the sound of Terran dreadnoughts descending into orbit. And then the door opened. First came the Marines, heavily armored, weapons holstered but visible, eyes scanning every shadow. No salute, no smiles. They were not here for ceremony. They were here for security. Next came the diplomats, not bureaucrats, not negotiators in soft robes or ceremonial silks. These were former officers, ex-soldiers, survivors, hardened men and women with Terran fleet medals still pinned to their chests. Their presence said everything. We are not here for approval. And then Commander Elias Rourke entered. Black uniform. No medals, no rank insignia, just a scar running down the left side of his face and the cold, unreadable stare of someone who had walked through hell and come back holding the devil's skull. Every eye turned. Even Councillor Cyril, the one who had supported Earth from the beginning, sat frozen as Rourke's boots echoed across the polished floor. He didn't bow. He didn't offer thanks. He simply stepped to the center, looked around, and said, "You called us here." Speak. Speaker Thalvon cleared his throat again, this time more shakily. Commander Rourke, it is our understanding that hostilities between your forces and the Drex Empire have reached a volatile escalation. The Council believes it is in everyone's interest to stop us, Rourke interrupted flatly. You want to stop us. Thalvon hesitated. To contain the damage. Rourke's jaw clenched. Damage? You watched our worlds burn and called it a border dispute. You labeled refugee cries as unverified distress signals. You ignored every report we sent, every plea. Now that we've hit back, you call it damage. A Vossian delegate shifted in his seat. You've destabilized the balance of power. There's no balance, Rourke snapped. There's predators and prey, For a long time, humanity was prey, but we're done bleeding." The chamber went cold. Then, slowly, Rourke opened a data slate and transmitted a projection to the center of the room. It was a list. Drex colonies. Every known system. Beside each name, a red icon. The room shifted uncomfortably. "These are Drex strongholds," he said. "Factories, shipyards, breeding camps, sites of war crimes. We're going to dismantle them, all of them," a Julari delegate hissed. "You mean to erase them?" "No," Rourke said. "We mean to end them." Speaker Thalvon raised his hands. "Surely there is a diplomatic path." "Diplomacy died when the Drex incinerated children's hospitals," Rourke growled. "Now we show them what death really looks like." "But—" Rourke stepped forward. Just one step. But the movement made half the chamber tense. "You had your chance," he said. "You chose silence. We chose war. And now you want to leash us." He looked around slowly. "No." He tapped his slate. A second file loaded, this time showing fleet movements, Terran alliances, rebel factions joining the cause, mercenaries signing on, former slaves rising with human-supplied weapons. "The galaxy is changing," Rourke said, "and we're not asking for permission anymore." Then he stepped back. The chamber was frozen. Not one word spoken. And Rourke, without another glance, turned and walked out. Behind him, the human delegation followed, silent, unified, unbreakable. Back on the Retribution, as the Terran fleet began to rise from the planet's orbit, Vex approached him on the bridge. "They didn't say a word after you left." "They will," Rourke said. "Eventually." She nodded. "And if they don't?" He looked out into the stars, voice low and final. "Then we'll teach them the same lesson we taught the Drex." The war changed after Gallus Prime, not because the Council passed new sanctions or declared a ceasefire, not because the Drex sued for peace or asked for terms. Number. What changed was fear, and who held it. For centuries, the Drex Empire had ruled with terror. They conquered planets with firestorms and chemical clouds, razed cities to ash, and enslaved whole species beneath their clawed boots. Fear was their weapon. But now? Now, fear had a new name. Humanity. The campaign shifted into something uglier, bloodier. Terran forces didn't just strike Drex targets, they hunted them. Every known prison camp was raided. Every bio-research lab sterilized, every general, admiral, and governor responsible for the war crimes cataloged by Earth was marked. No court, no trial, just justice. They called it the List. And Rourke made sure it was public. Every name, every face, every date and place of atrocity. The message was clear. There is nowhere in this galaxy you can hide where we won't find you. At first, the Drex resisted. Hard. In system after system, they threw everything they had at the humans. Bioweapons, stealth cruisers, even suicide fleets. But nothing worked, because the humans weren't playing by old rules. They learned faster, adapted quicker, fought like cornered animals with nothing to lose, and everything to avenge. One night, in the ruined Drex capital of Balkar, a special ops team led by Sergeant Naira Wells breached the old High Command vault. What they found wasn't gold or tech. It was files. Archives from decades of Drex domination. Files on slavery, torture, secret deals with council species who had quietly profited off Drex conquests. And those files, they were sent to every corner of the galaxy. Suddenly it wasn't just humans fighting. It was everyone the Drex had wronged. Former Drex allies turned their backs. Mercenary factions defected. Even some of the younger Drex, those born during the war, began to question the Empire's lies. Inside the Terran fleet, the tone shifted too. The hunger for vengeance began to hollow into something colder, something heavier. Not everyone celebrated the killings. Not every soldier could sleep at night. Rourke noticed it most in the eyes of his crew. They didn't speak of the dead anymore. Didn't toast victories, just long stares, mechanical movements, rage slowly turning into emptiness. On the Retribution, Vex cornered him in the command briefing room. "We're winning," she said, "but we're not living. Not anymore." Rourke didn't look up from his reports. "You think I don't see it?" she pressed. "The way they move like ghosts? The way you haven't slept in days?" He finally looked at her. "We're making sure this never happens again." "At what cost?" He said nothing. She stepped closer. "You're turning us into them, Elias." That made him flinch, but only for a second. Then he stood, voice low and sharp. "They came to our world. They butchered our people. They burned our homes. And the galaxy watched. If we stop now, if we soften, they'll do it again. Someone always will." She stared at him for a long moment. "Then what happens when there's no one left to fight?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. Out in the stars, the final phase of the war was beginning. The Drek's homeworld, their last stronghold, their fortress, their origin. He could already hear the orders being prepped, the fleets moving, the orbital stations being scouted. But deep down, beneath the layers of steel, scars, and resolve, Rourke felt something else. Doubt. Not about victory. Victory was guaranteed, but about what would be left of them when it was over. Because in every war, there's a moment when the hunter looks in the mirror and sees the monster staring back. And maybe, just maybe, that moment was closer than anyone wanted to admit. The skies above Drexar Prime looked like the end of time. A boiling storm of ships, lasers, kinetic missiles, and falling debris churned in orbit. Terran dreadnoughts ripped through the final line of defense like gods wielding thunder. Drek's defense platforms cracked apart in nuclear bursts. Escape pods scattered like ants, many of them vaporized before they could even clear the atmosphere. Below, the planet burned. Cities once declared unconquerable lay in ruin. Statues of Drek's emperors, who once fed prisoners to beasts for sport, crumbled under orbital strikes. Entire regiments of elite Drek's shock troops were overwhelmed by rebel factions armed with Terran rifles and decades of fury. It wasn't just a military campaign. It was a reckoning. On the bridge of the Retribution, Commander Elias Rourke stood watching it all through the forward viewport. No satisfaction, no pride, just silence. He had given the order hours ago. No survivors in high command bunkers. The rest would be given the chance to surrender once the symbol of Drek's power was erased forever. And now, the bunker was breached. "Sir," came a voice from the comms. It was Sergeant Naira Wells, Ground Team Alpha. "We've secured the last target. Primary confirmed dead, executed by his own guards. The Empire, it's done." Rourke nodded, barely a motion. "You did well, Sergeant." But she didn't disconnect. Her voice, usually steel, cracked. "Sir, there's something else. You need to see it." 2 hours later, Rourke was in the ruins of the Drek's Central Command Vault. The walls were blackened with fire. The ceiling collapsed in places, but the data cores still glowed faintly. Wells led him past a row of containment cells, tiny, dark, quiet. He stopped. Inside were children, not human, Dreks, small, sickly, barely clothed, eyes wide with terror. "We found dozens," Wells said softly. "Half of them experimented on, augmented, conditioned for suicide missions against us. The other half, I don't even know." Rourke stared at them. One child, barely old enough to stand, clutched a broken ration pack like it was a doll. "These aren't soldiers," he muttered. "No, sir." He stepped back, as if the walls themselves were collapsing in on him. This was who we were fighting, and now we've become the thing they feared." Wells looked at him. What do we do? For the first time in months, Rourke had no order, no protocol, just a broken, flickering sense of clarity. He knelt in front of the nearest child, reached into his jacket and slowly handed over a protein bar. The child flinched, then hesitantly took it. A second later, the others swarmed him, not with fear, but hunger and trust. "They're not our enemies," he whispered. "Not yet." Back on the Retribution, the announcement came through. The Galactic Council had convened. In a unanimous vote, they had declared the Drex Empire disbanded. All of its territories were to be split among liberated species. War crime tribunals would begin immediately, and Earth was granted not just a council seat, it was given a veto, the strongest voice in the room. Rourke stood in the council hall a week later, staring at the sea of representatives. He didn't wear a weapon, no armor, just a simple dark suit, a silver pendant in his palm, Elena's necklace, cleaned and whole. He spoke only once. "We didn't come to rule," he said, his voice steady. "We came to survive. But survival became revenge, and revenge nearly became genocide." He let the silence breathe. "Let history record this as the day we stopped, before we became what we fought, before we lost what made us human." And with that, he walked away. No applause, just silence. Later that night, he stood on a quiet ridge outside the rebuilt colony of New Boston. The stars were clear. The sky, finally, wasn't burning. Captain Vex joined him. "They're rebuilding," she said. "Everywhere. Even Drexar. They're sending doctors, engineers, teachers." Rourke didn't answer. "They're following your example," she added. He looked at her then, tired but peaceful. "No," he said. "They're doing better. That's the point." Far above them, Terran ships began to return home. Their war was over. And humanity? Humanity didn't conquer the stars. They survived them. They changed them. And for the first time since the first Drex ship darkened Earth's sky, they could finally breathe. Even if the echoes of war still whispered in the silence, they would never forget. But they would never be prey again.